The amount of value, even if the information is identical, the amount of value I get from being in the room is at least 10x.
Hi, I'm Russ.
And I'm Danny.
And this is the Memory Makers Podcast,
the show that helps you create amazing customer experiences and make more memories.
Memory Makers Podcast, Memory Makers Podcast, Memory Makers Podcast, Memory Makers Podcast. Do. So let it whip.
I didn't know what the jam was, but I was enjoying it.
I figure the new approach needs to be, if I'm going to insert it into obscure musicana, then I need to start it with the Memory Makers person, but actually bring it home so that way people get the payoff instead of the hanging Chad version that I do sometimes. So.
And I like how when you're referencing the old music, you use the reference of hanging Chad. It's just
what? It's 2000, right? No, that was 25 years ago. Neat.
The most recent references.
Yes. Well, I mean, that is the closest hanging Chad reference I can have. So. Oh, man. How are you, brother?
I am good. I'm energized. Just got home from a really good trip, which is, I'll tip the hat to what we're going to talk about today, but yeah. I'm feeling really good.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So let's dive in where you and Michelle just went to a Brendon Burchard event, and we've talked about this, whether it's at 360, whether it's at other educational events or anything that we do, of the importance of what do we do with all of these inspiring ideas? What things are life lessons? What are things that we need to be putting into practice? What are things that need to be in the hands of team members? How do we actually take this potential power that we get from learning and be able to start putting it into practice in a way that it's not going to then, oh, hey, those 25 pages of notes, which is what you had coming out of that event, which is wild. And I love that you got that much out of it. How do we take 25 pages of, ooh, this is really good, I really like this, and start to put it into practice at the big picture? So what I'd love to do is start with, one, tell me a little bit about the event that you went to, just in case others are looking for it. And what were the goals that you and Michelle had going into the event? And did that gel with how you guys were coming out of the event with?
So the event is run by Brendon Burchard, as you had mentioned. He runs a company called Growth Day, and it's an app, and it's got some personal growth things as part of that, and I'm a member of the app. And I saw that he had announced this event. I saw the announcement a few months ago, a couple months ago, something like that. And for me, I immediately knew I wanted to go because it was hosted by Brendon Burchard, who is a best-selling author of multiple books. If you're not familiar with him, High Performance Habits is his most popular, I believe. I own that book. Also bought another one while I was there, but hosted by him. And then he had other speakers as well coming in to present. There was Erwin McManus and Ed Milet and Natalie Ellis and some other people. And the lineup was so exciting to me. And I really like Brendon's approach in general to education and personal growth and becoming just better versions of yourself. And so for me, it was an easy decision to say, I want to go to make this happen. Now, it also could have been really easy, and I've done this before in the past, and I'm sure our listeners have as well, of, oh, that sounds really interesting, but, oh, there's a lot going on in the business, and, oh, my schedule's already kind of full, and it's not super convenient, and can I step away, and et cetera, et cetera. There's always reasons to not do something, right? Those will never really go away. There will always be reasons to not do it. And Michelle, who's my wife, we didn't really overthink it. We simply said, here's an opportunity. We're excited by it. Let's book it and make it work. And so we did. We booked it. And that was, again, 2-3 months ago, something like that. Now, it's interesting that you asked me the question of what were we hoping to get out of it? Because typically when I go to an event like this, I kind of set some intentions of this is the stuff that I want to learn, or these are the things that I'm looking for. And I went into this event not really being entirely sure what exactly I wanted to get out of it. Part of that is because I didn't really know, even though I knew who the speakers were, the kind of event he runs is not an event where they say, here's the agenda for the whole thing and here's what we're going to talk about. You just know when it starts and ends every day, and that's it. You don't know what's covered when, who's speaking when, because they shift and flow through things. And so I went in not really knowing what he would cover. But I can tell you that you had mentioned 25 pages of notes. That's exactly how many notes I had. And that's freehand writing in a journal of 25 pages like this.
Oh, and you got tiny script too. Your penmanship is petite. So that's, we'll call it 30.
Yeah, I was not writing big, that's for sure. And my wife and I looked at each other halfway through day one and said, I could leave right now and would have gotten my value's worth from the money we spent on the ticket and the time and the travel and the time that we committed, all those things. Obviously we didn't, we stayed, but there was so much good stuff so quickly that it was just so valuable for us. And I know you'll end up asking more questions, but that's at least a high level overview of the event, of what it was like and the format of it, so to speak.
So this was much more of a, hey, this is a great opportunity to grow. We know and are familiar with who the lineup is and the main players, and we're big fans of their content. So it was probably a little bit of an exercise of not being comfortable being uncomfortable, but at least, not leaning into, hey, this is, the rigid plan. How did you guys feel about that? Like, was that was a known entity going in, so that you guys knew that, hey, we're it's going to be hard for us to do some pre-planning, strategizing, and goal setting until we're actually in it. How did you like that, though? Because some people would hear that and say, ooh, that sounds a little intimidating, and I really like to know like what I'm getting into, versus, and then you said in that first half of the day already delivered the value for it. What were a couple of the things that really popped out at you from that first half of the day?
So how we felt about it, I felt fine, because I know that when it comes to, let's just say, our particular amusement industry that we work in, any event, whether it's Amusement 360 that we host or any other event, it's very common to say, this is the structure, here is the agenda, here's who's speaking when, and there's nothing wrong with that, and we continue to do that ourselves. It's just a different approach entirely, where you essentially have to let go of wanting to know what's going to happen when and trying to schedule your time around, well, I want to be in the room for this, but I'm going to go take a meeting for that. Let all that go. Be in the room the whole time, which is what we did, and trust and be open to whatever we're going to learn. And it's kind of freeing in a way to not have an expectation where, because we've all been to an event where we can see what's coming up, and there may be a topic or two that we feel pretty solid on, like, I don't know if I need to learn this, and we get maybe less excited, or we disengage ourselves before it even happens, and we don't give ourselves a chance to get into it. And when you don't know what's coming next, you simply have to be present. And I think that was really helpful, of just, we don't know what's going to happen, so let's just roll. And it was kind of discovery as we go, and we learned, man, so many things. And when it comes to some of the stuff that was big takeaways from the event, I think I was just sharing this morning with Mike, who works behind the camera, as you mentioned at the end of every episode, Mikey Mike on the ones and twos. And I was sharing with him one of the first takeaways. We all have heard, well, when you're in a situation, you can't always control the situation, but you can always control how you respond, right? That's a phrase that, and a philosophy that we're aware of. That's not anything new. But the way he phrased it just hit a little bit differently, that made me think about that in a new light. And what he said is that we sometimes will just consider ourselves characters in a scene with other characters, and our character just reacts. But we're not. We're actually the director of the character. And instead of just being in the scene and having to respond to circumstances and people, we can direct ourselves and say, hey, here's exactly how I want to show up. Here's exactly how I want to behave, because I'm literally the director. And it kind of allows you yourself to get a third person perspective of any situation that you're in, and realize we have so much more control over how we act, how we respond, how we communicate, than sometimes I think we give ourselves credit for. We like to think of our I think it's easy to fall into the trap of, well, just things are happening around me and I have to react to them, and so much stuff's going on, and stress and day to day and operations and chaos and dot, 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 all these things. But we are also the director. We literally control exactly how we show up, even though we can't control the things around us.
I like that. I've not heard it put in that perspective before, which it does. You can kind of see yourself stepping out into a third person and intervening on your own behalf when you kind of view it through that prism, for sure. Mm-hmm. So that's neat. So you obviously have 25 pages of written notes. Your next steps, because, again, this is not only do we evangelicalize on being able to, go to these different things, look for opportunities for self-improvement, in your business or personal or any of that. And people, a lot of people will take diligent notes as they go through that. So you have 25 pages of this in your journal. What are your next steps to start putting that frame, like being able to do something with them? And then how do you start to break down that game film, for lack of a better analogy?
Yeah, sure. I'll hit on this, and I want to give you a prompt to make sure we come back to this, but I also want to talk about what it was like to be able to be in the room and not do something like this virtually, or not try to watch it later on or have other things happening. Let's come back to that, but I want to make sure I answer this question right here.
Made the note now.
So for me, one of the things that we've taught a lot at Amusement 360 comes from John Maxwell, and it's a framework called ACT, A-C-T, which I'll break it down really fast, which is where you go through all your notes and you write an A next to everything that you need to apply in your business or your life. You write a C next to everything that you need to change in your business or your life, and a T next to all the things you need to teach the people around you in your business. And then once you have that, you then on new pages you go through and find all the A's. You list out all the A's in order, or all the A's together in a column, all the C's together in a column, and all the T's together in a column, so that you have them organized and all the things you're going to apply, all the things that you'll change, and all the things that you'll teach. And then within each column, you'll start and say, okay, of everything that I've listed here as an app to apply, all the things listed as A, what is the number one most important? And force rank them. What's number one? What's number two? What's number three? All the way down. Do the same thing for all the C's and the same thing for all the T's. And then essentially, if you have, let's say, 15 A's, 15 C's, and 15 T's, start with number one on each and say, I'm going to do the number one thing to apply, the number one thing to change, and the number one thing to teach. And that'll be the first thing I do. And I'm going to continue doing that until it's fully implemented and it's done. Then I'll go to number two and do that until it's done. Then number three, and you have an entire plan of growth to prioritize those things. I'm going to do that. The first thing I'm going to do first is take all of my notes that are handwritten and digitize them. And a couple reasons for that. One, it allows me to go through and make sure I have comprehension on what I wrote, because a lot of it I was trying to write as quickly as I could and capture things and to reorganize as needed, get that digitized in a way that it flows a little bit better. It's also then searchable in the future in a document. And then once I have that, I will do the ACT and figure out the things that I want to apply and change and teach within my life, within the business, within anywhere else, and kind of use that framework to make sure that I don't have, because and I've done this in the past a long time ago, and I work hard to not do this anymore, is take a booklet like this that I have and stick it on the shelf and then never look at it again. Mm-hmm. Because I could go through the first 2 pages of this and I realized, oh, I completely forgot about that. Oh, that note there, that's really good. For me to think that I'm just going to remember that in the future without ever actually using this book is nonsense, right? Yeah. We have to be able to be intentional about these things. Otherwise, it's not a good use of our time. If we go to just be there during that one day or two and then we move on with our life, we might have some of the knowledge, but the likelihood of us applying any of it is small. And knowledge that's not applied is not very powerful.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think back to even, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, when we would do things like Tony Robbins events or other things. And it's like, I keep those notebooks and I've got all of those kinds of things. But the stuff that I've really stuck with and put into practice regularly were the things then that after the event was, kind of putting that in the reorganized digital summary of things. One, because it gave my brain another pass after drinking from the fire hose to be able to kind of replant that seed in my brain. But then you're actually then taking those things and putting them into into, your flow chart or your process. So when you're digitizing those, Danny, are you retyping all of that stuff into a document? Are you doing a text scanner and things like that? What's your process to make sure that you're reabsorbing that information best?
I'm going to type it myself by hand. And I'm going to go through, because it allows me to make sure that I read through everything that I wrote and I transpose all of it. And that helps with the absorption and the ability to remember and recall and apply. I don't want to just take a picture and scan. Sure, it could be faster, but it's not about speed and efficiency for me. It's about effectiveness. And in order to be effective, I have to learn it.
Yeah. Well, and to your point earlier, you remember some extra context as you were going through those notes or what have you, that you can kind of add some color to those, and or as you're percolating in that and retyping it, you may have an idea of, ooh, this is another area that this can be applied towards or what have you. So yeah, I like that approach as well. Or you can be super fancy like some folks in our office, where your notebook, when you write it down, automatically scans it into a piece. But for me, and maybe it's the nostalgia, but just being able to go back through and get multiple reps with that content is what at least works, best for me when it comes to that. So, so you had thrown out a little, a buoy that we'll circle back to. So you had mentioned the importance of doing something like this in person versus virtual participation or rewatching of recordings, because I've had the benefit of both, like an EntreLeadership event by Dave Ramsey. I've had the privilege of being in the room for that, as that was going on live, and being able to take that content, and then in subsequent years had done the virtual, when we as a leadership team and everything were kind of doing that as a group exercise a couple of times as well. What were your takeaways on, hey, all things being equal, but they're really not, when it comes down to some of that? So it's a little bit of a loaded question of being in the room, has less opportunity for distraction, more opportunity for, you to connect at a deeper emotional level with the content. So that way it can have more staying power as I'm answering the question for you.
So I'll start at the top there, and they're not equal. Not even close. They're just not. I have done a lot of trainings myself. I've done a lot of webinars. I've done a lot of live streams of events for my computer. I've done a lot of video courses. I've listened to podcasts. I've done all that, and I've gone to events. I've traveled to make sure I go to events. The amount of value, even if the information is identical, the amount of value I get from being in the room is at least 10x, and it's not even close. It is so much different, and there's a lot of things that go into that. I think part of it is the sense of community of other people around you, right? There is, when we're learning remotely, whether it's a video course, and there's nothing wrong with that. I do tons of training online, a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I use it to the best of the ability that I have. But it's also tends to be kind of a solo task that you're on your own learning. And even if you're comparing notes with somebody else, or even if there's another person sitting next to you, it's not the same as at this particular event. There was 1,500 people all there learning and growing together, and having that sense of camaraderie and community, and having breakout groups that we did consistently multiple times a day, of getting in groups of 5 and talking about what were our takeaways and how are we going to apply those into our life. And those kinds of things you just cannot replicate the same way virtually. And so I think there's so much power to stepping away from whatever day-to-day life is, whether you're an employee or a business owner, it doesn't matter. Step away from that and go to events inside our industry, go to events outside our industry. This has nothing to do with the amusement industry at all. And I learned so much for myself and about myself, and that allows me as the founder of Action Lab Leadership to also provide more to our clients when it comes to personal growth and leadership and growing their businesses. But when I think about how powerful it is to not only be in the room surrounded by other people that I'm not going through this alone. I'm not the only one facing this problem. The other people I'm talking with, there's like a camaraderie there when you're not alone. But it's also the ability to stay focused and stay on task. And I know for me, one of the intentions I did set for my own time, not necessarily about what I wanted to learn, is I set the intention that I'm going to be fully present. I'm not checking work messages and emails during the whole event, because it can be so easy to just get taken out of it in an instant when there's something that feels like it might be urgent or a fire that we need to put out. I didn't really do any of that. And a couple things happened. One, I was way more present, way more focused. And two, everything was fine in the business. Nothing burned down. There was no issues. And it was that good reminder that we can step away. No matter how busy things seem or how much people need us, we can set some boundaries and say, hey, I'm going to be at this event. And even if you do need to check in every night saying, hey, from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., I'm at this event, but after that, I'll check in and take some calls. But as much as possible, being in the room, being fully present, taking notes and learning. And it is so much different than trying to do anything on your own online. And I encourage anyone in any business in any industry to consistently make time to go and do events like that.
I love it. Well, I'm so glad that you guys got a plethora of things to be able to take in and also share and help other people grow from it as well, which is awesome. So I'm going to pseudo put you on the spot. I'm going to wrap up what we've talked about. And during that time, your task is to flip through your 25 pages as fast as you possibly can and randomly put your finger on one of those pages and give us a little gem of gold once we get that. So one, being in the room at any of these events, knowing and trusting that you can take time to be present at those and that things will continue to move on and function so that way you can get the most out of this investment and focus. Two, when you're there, keeping that presence mindset as well as taking diligent notes. And then when you're getting done with that event is making sure that you have a way to digitize those, re-enter those in to make sense of everything and apply that ACT exercise, which I love so much, is really then that kind of key focus of if we're going to actually do something with these things and we're not just, because there are better ways to get time out of the office. Like you could be on a beach and you could be, having the pina coladas, but when you're going to an event specifically for the purpose of benefiting yourself, it only benefits you if you are putting things into practice at the end of all of that. So, Danny, randomized, give me gold.
If someone followed you around and observed you for the last 3 months straight, would they say this is someone who's serious about achieving their goals? That question was, I thought, such a good shift of, and a good call out question, because a lot of us like to think of course I'm serious. But if someone observed you and the way you work and how you spend your time, would they observe that you are serious about your goals? And I loved that question.
I don't know how. Okay, I got more to do.
So imagine that for 10 hours a day for 3 days straight.
Yeah. Well, just to get the clarity and not to open up the Pandora's box again, but just to get the clarity of that is a simple litmus test to be able to put towards this to help me reprioritize if I don't feel all of that's lining up. And some of it for me is chasing a 4-year-old around. So I'm very serious about my goals with the 4-year-old. But yeah, how do you, if that creates a little bit of anxiety with some of that, it's like, am I leaving something on the table or am I okay with that balance? And yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. Well, I think that's an awesome place for us to wrap, my friend. What do you think?
Sounds perfect.
I love it. So more awesome content coming your guys' way. We've got a stack of guest interviews that are going to be hitting the pipeline here in the next few episodes. And so really excited for you guys to dive into it. If you've got thoughts on what we're doing and think you'd like to be on the show, hit us up. We're always open door policy with a few caveats. But again, we want to learn from you guys and share with what you guys are seeing.
If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.
5 stars, please and thank you if we've earned it. And thank you very much for doing so.
And like Russ had mentioned, if you've got ideas, whether it's yourself or anybody else, topics you want to see, guests you want to see, follow us on social media, send us a DM.
And big shout out as always to Mikey Mike on the 1s and 2s working that Ultranet for us. And thank you all for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one, Troublemakers.
Dude, how good was that question at the end?
It's so good. In my head, I'm like, fucking less YouTube.
I have 25 pages of notes.
Now make sure you do your exercise like we do at 360. What was the last like entrepreneurially kind of topic we did? And that's not a word for the bloopers when you play that, Mike. I know entrepreneurially, either of those are not necessarily traditional words. Leave. Let's see here. I am ready when you are, Danny.
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's rock it out.
Okay. I'm ready. Go flight.
Let's do it.
All right, Mike's ready. Let's hit it.